in Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir, for your kind and motivational words. Moving forward, we have among us Dr. Bhaskar Gupta, Director and Dean Academics at IIMT Group of Colleges, Greater Noida. He had been the Director of SSITM Aligarh, BIRTM Hujja, and NITRA Technical Campus Ghaziabad. He has published several papers in national international journals and working on various state and central government sponsored projects. He has more than 2 Indian patents filed, 2 copyrights, and 2 book chapters in CRC Press. Dr. Bhaskar is associated with world's renowned universities for academic cum research mission. He is working on DRDO sponsored project on robotics, completing NASCOM based project on software defined radio. His R&D achievements are commercialization of electronic eye for blind people in collaboration with MSME Delhi, developing UAVs in ITE and IIRS Dehradun. He had been 6-time coordinator for IIT Delhi Virtual Lab Program and working as nodal coordinator for IIRS ISRO Outreach Program and IITM Swayam Natal Program. Presently, he is working as a director and dean academics at IITM Group of Colleges, Greater Noida. So, without taking much of your time, I would like to invite Dr. Bhaskar Gupta to address the audience. Sir, please.
Thank you very much for such a nice introduction. Good afternoon to one and all present here for this workshop on developing online repository of business plan, prototypes, developed and way forward plan. And I am glad to know that this is under mentor-mentee scheme of innovation cell of Ministry of Education, and this is one of the Q3 activities of IIC 4.0. So I am really glad to take this workshop on this wonderful topic, and I am expecting that the session would be both enriching and knowledgeable for you all, and hopefully you would be able to inculcate the required skills for becoming a successful entrepreneur, startup founder, which is the current requirement, which is the mandate from the Ministry of Education, which is the dream of Honorable Prime Minister also. We have to promote the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in academic institutions across the country. In view of that only, IIC cell concept came into the picture, and I am aware of this fact that nowadays more than 3,000 IIC cells across the country have been opened in different institutions in order to promote the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. Let me just express my sincere gratitude to the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Dr. R.K. Gupta, Shri Suresh Gupta ji, Chancellor Swamiti of Maharaja Agrawal University, Professor Technology, New Delhi, all the 5 mentee institutions under mentor-mentee scheme, students and dear faculty fraternity who have assembled here to take part in this workshop. Without taking too much of time, let me just begin with my presentation. So give me some time, I am going to present. यहाँ से इनको किस पे क्लिक करें? Beginning?
It is visible, sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Ma'am, please
Yes,
let me know whether it is changing or not. Is it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so welcome to this workshop, and this is about how can we develop an online repository of business plans, ideas, prototypes developed during a long startup journey, during the startup cycle, which is a long journey. So it is not just the repository of ideas, but in fact, if you are going to work as a startup founder, we have to be careful that our work There must be a repository, innovation repository of, e-systems. Most of the sessions are being taken in online mode. So that kind of material is to be stored somewhere for the reference. That is the purpose of repository. It's a digital collection of the intellectual output of students, faculty, administrators, policymakers, and others who are members of the university community. It is about expression of institutional vitality, contribution to a growing network of open access scholarship, puts faculty and students in the mainstream of scholarly activities. What is an institutional repository? As it is an academic institution, it is the content of an institutional repository is institutionally defined, captures the original research and other intellectual properties created by the university's population across many diverse fields. Scholarly examples may include preprints, peer-reviewed articles, monographs, teaching materials, conference papers, thesis and dissertations, computer software, works of art, photographic and video recordings, some artistic work, literary work can also be included sometimes. Cumulative and perpetual, it is about content submitted to the institutional repository should be both cumulative and maintained in perpetuity. Open access must be there, providing no or low barrier access to the university's intellectual products. Institutional repositories can be classified into two, commercial and open access. When it is a commercial repository, you have to go to Digital Commons, Content DM, Digitool, Hyperion, Innovative Interfaces, InMagic, Presto, and Vital. But usually it is an open access repository. We do have different kinds of software tools for creating these online repositories of the e-materials. DSpace is very popular, which is very widely used by DRDO also. DXLS, ePrints, FEDORA Commons, Greenstone, Opus is equally popular, Arno, Archimate, and Archive Space. In India, we have been using DSpace, FEDORA, ePrints, and Opus very popularly, and it is used by both industry and academia. IRs can be used for scholarly communication, storing learning materials and coursework, managing collections of research documents, preserving digital materials for the long-term use, knowledge management, electronic publishing, research assessment exercises, and of course, collaboration tool. Institutional repository of ideas or a business plan which you want to transform into the prototype is a very powerful idea that can serve as an engine of change for any institution. In this digital era, modern era, everybody wants contents and to be successful information service providers. So information center and libraries needs to develop services in such a way so that the end users may manipulate the content as per their requirements. Therefore, in the present scenario, repositories have become an indispensable component for information and knowledge sharing in the scholar world. Repositories are going to provide a method for capturing and maintaining today's electronic materials so that tomorrow's scholars can understand the thinking behind the published records. Again, for the standard IRs, each and every institution should have to equip its library professionals so that they can be able to cope up with the ever-growing changes in this part. Institutional repositories is about digital collection that is going to capture and preserving the intellectual output of the university communities, respond to two strategic issues facing academic institutions. They provide a central component in reforming scholarly communication by stimulating innovation in a disaggregated publishing structure. Number two is they serve as tangible indicators of an institution's quality, thus increasing its visibility, prestige, and public value. Institutional repositories are a part of an emerging movement towards open access to research information. Faculty and researchers at universities worldwide gather and interpret data, advocate new ideas, and extending human knowledge. This work is sometimes shared with other scholars and researchers as working papers, technical reports, and eventually show up in a peer-reviewed journal or book. Some may not. This preprint culture is strongest in the scientific and technical disciplines, but social scientists share similar works. One of the ways in which authors can self-archive their work is by depositing it in an institutional repository. This is a digital collection of intellectual output, such as research articles, theses, and teaching materials, produced by members of an institution and stored on the institution's server. Not only does IRs allow for free access to these materials, but they also provide a way of storing and preserving them. Faculty and researcher, this one with. One of the ways in which authors can self-archive their work is by depositing it in an institutional repository. This is a digital collection of intellectual output, such as research articles, teaching materials, produced by members of an institution and stored on the server. Since the repositories contain the intellectual output of the university, and these output are very diverse and may include the preprints of articles or research outputs, reports submitted for publication, the text of journal articles accepted for publication, revised text of published work with comments from academic readers, conference papers, teaching materials, student projects, doctoral theses, and dissertations, data sets resulting from research projects, committee papers, computer software, works of art and photographs, and video recordings, etc. In very simple, an institutional repository may contain work of which copyright is owned by the author or university, for which permission has been obtained to include a copy of the work in the repository. The potential uses of institutional repositories content in other digital environment are countless. Institutional repositories content does not need to sit in the institutional repositories only. It should be brought into the new digital environments where it can be easily consulted, represented, and integrated with other current research and educational activities. The institutional repositories content also should be collected in creative ways and not rely solely on being submitted by an individual entity or a faculty member. Digital repositories have a number of functions to open up and offer the outputs of the institution or community to the world, to impact on and influence developments by maximizing the visibility of outputs and providing the greatest possible chance of enhanced impact as a result, to showcase and sell the institution to interested constituencies, prospective staff, prospective students, and other stakeholders in the ecosystem, to collect and curate digital outputs or inputs in the case of spatial collections, to manage and to measure research and teaching activities, to provide and promote a workspace for work in progress and for collaborative or large-scale projects, to facilitate and further the development and sharing of digital teaching materials and aids, to support and sustain student endeavors, including providing access to thesis and dissertations, and providing a location for the development of e-portfolios. 6 factors that a business model encompasses. If you are going to work as a budding entrepreneur, you have come out with some creative idea which you want to transform into, feasible business plan. You have to work with a very right problem statement. Otherwise, your startup will fail and your idea will die. So you have to choose a very innovative business model for your startup. So you have to be very careful about, once you are going to start your own business or enterprise. So important factors are articulation of the value proposition. So we have to look for the value proposition of the repositories also, identification of the target market segment. We have to define the business value chain. We have to specification of revenue generation mechanism, specification of the business position within the value network, formulation of the business competitive strategy are all important factors behind the innovative business model. You have to be careful about the different innovation mechanism and design-driven, mechanism or design-driven innovation. And you have to choose innovative business models so that you are going to create entire new market, which I am going to talk about. That means it's about, radical innovation. We have been using disruptive kind of innovation, incremental kind of innovation, sustaining kind of innovation. But dear friends, it's a time of using radical innovation when it comes to a technological breakthrough. There had not been any technological breakthrough since a long time where you are going to create something new, entirely new market, where you are going to develop your product, you are going to offer your services for the commercialization, and thereafter you can think of scaling up of your business or the startup. For institutions and other open access repositories, the value proposition can be summarized as follows: maximizing the accessibility, maximizing the availability, enabling the discoverability, enable increased functionality, enabling long-term storage and curation, enabling other potential benefits are all important advantages of using a digital repository. So if you look at the metrics, you will come to know it is always about viability. So viability means some technical feasibility must be there, commercial viability must be there. If you are not going to work with some feasible idea or the right problem, definitely your prototype would not be able to get that positive response from the customer, which is one of the important stages of any design thinking process, where we have to empathize with our customers in order to gather the idea of the consumers, and based on that we are going to perform reiterations. Number of iterations are being performed until we get the right product or service in our hands, which must be the right prototype. So does our business offering fit stakeholder needs and preferences? So you have to be very careful about the needs and wants of the customer. If you are not going to work with their needs, then definitely your startup is going in a wrong direction. Sustainability is equally important. What are the likely costs? So it is about economic sustainability, adaptability. Is our model adaptable and flexible as per the requirements of our end users? We have to be careful. When it is about business scope and development, can we develop and launch this? This is very important to know. Do our resources at least match the likely costs? Can we build in resilience? Is it resilient or not? Business management, can we manage the business? What resources can we find? Will all stakeholders in the system remain committed? So this is all about your business plan. There are already many examples of repository services in existence. Those related to ingest activities are digitization services, digitizing legacy materials such as older journal articles and dissertation work, and special collection material. It could be about intellectual property rights, copyright advisory, information services, advising on rights issues for authors, readers, and institutions or repositories. Open access advisory, information services, advising on issues around opening up research outputs of all types. So these are the different types of repository services. Technical advisory services, advising on OAI compliance and similar technical issues around networking and interoperability, repository building services, constructing repositories for organizations that wish to outsource this element, repository hosting services, hosting repositories for organizations that wish to outsource this particular element. So if you look at the business profile, it is about description of my business during session 1, where you have to describe about your innovative product or the service. You must focus on targeted market and your customers. You have to describe your customer profile. You must have both demographic and sociographic data available with you in order to understand their problems and why customers want or need your product or service. Growth trends understood already at the mentee institutions. There is one session, one topic in IIC Q3, this product market fit. So you must be knowing about problem solution fit and product market fit. So your product must always have market readiness if you want the best commercialization and financial gain. Concerning your product or service that will enable you to maintain profitable pricing. So you have to be careful about this. Describe convincingly that you are passionately committed to your new business and have the realism to make inevitable hard choices. Describe your work experience in the business you plan to start, including a list of your technical skills, scientific skills, and knowledge which will be required in your business. Describe yourself, including your education. This is about your vision. Furnish a tabulation of each piece of equipment you intend to use, including a description and the budget for each. Explain the form of business organization you intend to use and why is it best for your business. List the names of your lawyer, accountant, insurance agent, and any other professionals. List what licenses you will require to go into business. Institutional repositories, by capturing, preserving, and disseminating collective intellectual capital, serves as meaningful indicators of an institution's academic quality. It has been seen that much of the intellectual output and value of an institution's intellectual property is usually diffused through thousands of scholarly journals. An institutional repository of ideas has many benefits, such as it provides long-term solution, improves scholarly communication, remedying the weakness of self-archiving, that is lack of proper security, long-term preservation, and wasting faculty time. Extending the work of disciplinary repositories improves online teaching both on campus and via net. So what are the benefits? Providing institutional information asset management, defining institutional sources of research, identifying institutions' value to funding sources, raises the profile of the institution, institutional research more visible, will be more impactful and available in electronic form, contributes to national and global initiatives, which will ensure an international audience for institutions' latest research. Other universities are developing their own archives, which together will be searchable by global search tools. Libraries can take a lead role in this in order to raise the profile of an academic institution. institutional access to international research output, international access to research generated in developing countries, promotion of institutional research output, creation of partnership and networking are all the benefits of using institutional repositories. IBM issued digital library software in 1991 to manage the collection of digital files for the first time. IBM groundbreaking technology grappled with key issue of storage, maintenance, retrieval and display digital content. This was the first effort towards the digital repository software and it showed path to others. So this is the repository created by IBM using software. There is now software easily available to create and maintain in institutional repositories, and as a result, the challenges in setting up an institutional repositories are now seen as being less to do with technology and more to do with managerial, organizational and cultural issues. Some systems are open source while others are commercial. There are a number of softwares available for creating these IRs. The brief of some are given below. So DSpace was developed jointly by MIT Library and Hewlett-Packard. DSpace describes itself as a groundbreaking digital repository system. It captures, stores, indexes, preserves and redistributes an organization's research material formats. So DSpace is one of the softwares for creating institutional repositories. ePrints is very popular in India, is the original digital repository software developed by University of Southampton to manage an open archive. ePrints was the first open archives initiative compliant repository software. It typically supports the collections of preprints and technical reports, often subject based in scope. FEDORA is very popular these days, is a digital repository jointly developed by Cornell University, Information Science and University of Virginia as a project. The FEDORA project's goal is to provide an open source repository software and related services to serve as the foundation for many different types of information management system. FEDORA is not a complete system such as DSpace and ePrints, whereas it provides an infrastructure upon which 339 services can be developed, but I would suggest to go for ePrints or DSpace rather than going for FEDORA. Greenstone is another repository software which is very widely used in New Zealand. So now it is also popular in India, but DSpace is very widely used. In India, the efforts towards adopting open access initiative have already been started, but there are some hurdles and misunderstandings about open access. And these are lacks of expertise in every organization to promote creation of institutional archives, lack of infrastructural facilities like hardware and connectivity of high bandwidth. Scientists are under the impression that editors of renowned journals may not accept the archived papers. The scientists are not aware of the fact that the attitudes of the journals are now changing, and renowned journals also permit the authors to archive both preprints and postprints in India. If you look at this particular table, you will come to know the digital repository of IIT Bombay is using National Institute of Oceanography, NIT Rourkela is using DSpace, MDI Gurgaon is using DSpace, again IIM Kozhikode is already using DSpace, and National Chemical Laboratory Pune is also using DSpace and ePrint software for institutional repositories. If you look at the skill requirements for the generation of IRs, it has to be about management skills, software skills, metadata has to be collected, storage and preservation, content, it is about licensing, it is about partnering with others, it is about advocacy, training and mentoring support. Current awareness and professional development are the different skills required for IRs. ability to manage the repository budget, develop a strategy and costing for the future development of the repository, source funding opportunities for repository projects where appropriate, manage the repository service by identifying goals and future strategies for improvement in the repository service, develop workflow to manage the capture, description and preservation, etc. of repository outputs. Try to manage the day-to-day running of the repository, including any mediated deposit service or self-archiving by authors. Coordinate and manage activities of repository. Set up test collections and user satisfaction surveys to evaluate the service. Monitor deposit, download and other usage indicators to identify the impact. Manage user expectations to ensure that expected service delivery is achievable. Handle comments, complaints and relationships if service delivery does not meet user demand. Manage other difficulties as they arise. Familiarity with standard web-based software system must be there, which must include Unix, Linux and SQL Server, MySQL, XML, PHP, Java. You must have some knowledge of these operating systems, some front end and back end. At least one major repository software must be available, but not limited to ePrints, DSpace, FEDORA, Opus. Web-based software and databases, ability to customize, deploy and manage repository and associated software, arrange and carry out testing of the system and then evaluate it, design and develop repository interface and tools, identify and develop value-added services such as community and collection pages in the repository. Familiarity with relevant metadata standards including Dublin Core, develop appropriate metadata and other standards, liaise and test implementation with cataloging team where appropriate, ensure compliance and monitor metadata quality on an outgoing basis. Familiarity with current best practice procedures, work with IT services, scope the long-term storage requirements of repositories, work with institutional personnel including university records manager, archivist and IT services, identify best practice and establish requirements for preservation, develop a policy for how different materials should be preserved and try to create impact. Familiarity with IPR issues needed when accepting material, needed to develop guidelines to ensure consistent practice, must be able to provide advice on relevant IPR issues. You must have an ability to develop a content policy, types of materials to be printed, to be stored, how different materials should be managed, how materials are to be managed, how withdrawals of deposited items are to be managed, increase the amount and quality of items, identifying suitable publications for deposit, departmental web pages and following the development of new areas of research, encouraging authors of suitable publications to deposit their work, explaining to authors how to self-archive, asking authors for files from authors and convert to appropriate formats for deposit, could be Word or PDF, and deposit in the repository on their own behalf. Lies with a wide variety of departments, identify high-level and longer-term strategies. You have to identify and address any areas of concern. You have to build awareness and confidence in the repository service, develop practical policies. Lies with a wide variety of departments and interest groups in particular. Senior institutional managers must be aware of the benefits of the repository to the institution. Develop an advocacy program, develop advocacy and publicity materials, be very proactive, assess the training needs of the stakeholders, develop suitable training programs and mentor them, organize and run training sessions, introduction to open access, how to deposit items into the repository. So some key issues are there: the institutional culture, scope of the repository, content, access levels, legal aspects, ethical aspects, standards, sustainability and funding. Comprehension, it means that all members of the team must share a common vision and understanding of the purposes and scope of the collaboration. It involves thinking and working together with different people contributing their different talents, working with others to solve problems and making important decisions. Context, change, caring, commitment, creativity, competency are all very much required. Institutional repositories can fail over the time for many reasons. It could be about policy, management failure, or incompetence or technical problems. Scientists, librarians, and library professionals in developing countries like India have to aware themselves about the new opportunities provided by information and communication technologies. Thank you very much. It's over to you.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I hope it will be very fruitful and encouraging to each one of us. Participants, the session is open for your queries. Kindly raise your hand to ask the queries. Now, I would like to invite Engineer Kunal Singh, Innovation Ambassador IIC MET, to ask the queries. Kunal sir, please.
Thank you, ma'am. And that was a wonderful session, sir.
Thank you.
So there are some queries here. My first query is that how to motivate students to use these institutional repositories. That is the most challenging aspect of
this is a very pertinent question. See, first